Week 157, and here we are. In this video, we're going to talk about the Toronto real estate market, where you are getting your real estate information from, and some pretty laughable real estate reporting from a pretty popular Toronto Instagram account. And we're going to dig into where I see our market moving in the next couple of months. So some of you might be wondering, what is week 157? Now, most of you who have been watching these videos or been following the Spring Team, that's the real estate team that I run. I'm Ara Memorian, by the way. The real estate team that I run, we've been putting out a blog, a weekly market report article since March of 2020. That's ground zero of when everything started happening that changed the way we see the world and interact with the world. And it changed the way people interact with real estate in major urban cities, especially Toronto. Toronto was on the map prior to COVID, obviously on the path to becoming one of the greatest cities on the planet. Can't argue with that. But during COVID, we sort of became the talk of the world. We became globally recognized as a place where we have a safe metropolitan city. I mean, I use safe in quotes because we've seen some serious things happen over the past few years that we haven't really seen before, but that's kind of the natural progression of a city as it grows. And we have a place that provides world-class education, not from one, not from two, but from 4 to 5 high-level post-secondary institutions, from York to U of T to Metropolitan University, formerly Ryerson, George Brown, so many world-class post-secondary institutions that are bringing people here. Not to mention our employment environment is one of the strongest in the world and not one-trick pony. We're not talking, like Calgary used to be a one-trick pony with just oil, oil and gas type of jobs. But now Calgary is kind of becoming more of a tech hub and a crypto hub, and also, of course, finance and oil and all that stuff. So, but Toronto has always been, and I think that's one of the reasons why we are one of the most resilient markets on the planet, is most people fail to layer in that one sort of factor that has no real data point. Like, there's no way I could layer this in to show you, see, here's why Toronto real estate is doing whatever it's doing. For years, we've had strong jobs available, from finance to film. And then, of course, in tech, specifically crypto has done very well with that industry here in Toronto. Just in healthcare, like, there have been high quality jobs available here for decades, but it's just now people are realizing that, hey, I can go to school here, I can come here, I can move here, I can get a job here, I can create a family here. But with all of that, our city is getting very expensive. People, not just from here wanting to make purchases, but from everywhere else wanting to make purchases and rent and etc. So there's just a lot of attention on Toronto, and I don't really see that changing, which is why I'm very comfortable continuing to invest in Toronto, regardless of what the market is doing. Like, investing in Toronto is not going to give you much of a cash flow opportunity unless you're into the multi-unit type of investments, which require multiple 7 figures to get into. So you can't really access any cash flowing properties unless you have that significant amount of capital to get started. But you can certainly get into a single unit condo or a duplex type freehold investment without multiple 7 figures, essentially breaking even or perhaps out of pocket a little bit per month. But with the way the rental market is working here, you're getting your principal recapture, so your tenant is paying down that mortgage for you, so you offset that against any monthly deficit or whatever, and at the end of the day, you're ending up with a pretty solid return on your investment. So anyway, this isn't a video about investing. We can talk about that separately if that's something that interests you. But right now, the way the market is moving, tomorrow is going to be a very important announcement. In last week's video, for some reason, I thought that the Bank of Canada announcement was on the 2nd, 5 days ago. Obviously, that's not the case. I don't know why I thought it was the 2nd, but it is tomorrow, March the 8th. So we're going to find out what the Bank of Canada is going to do with their rates. I mean, my assumption has been, since the January employment numbers came out, my assumption has been that they're going to increase 25 basis points on the back of a stronger than expected economy, assuming the economy can handle that kind of bump. I think that's what's going to happen. I don't think that that's going to affect the market too much. If that does happen, I think it might remove select borderline buyers from the market. But remember, the majority of these people that are out shopping, and if you look at the numbers on the blog, it's linked below, you'll see that for the first time in over a year, we've had over 100 condo sales in 1 week, 7 day period. We haven't seen that since before last March when things started to cool down. So that's a really important thing to look at. You've got people armed with pre-approvals, with rates protected prior to any increases happening, that are still actively making purchases, which is why things tend to lag after any sort of major announcement happens. Now, if there is that increase, I think it's going to create a little bit of negativity in the air. I think it'll remove some buyers from the market, whether they can still afford to buy or not. It's just been the natural movement of buyers as we've gone through this. When nobody's buying, nobody's buying. When people start buying, everybody starts buying, which is why we're always talking about taking advantage of the market when nobody else is. And I know it's much easier said than done. Like, it's hard to go and make an offer on a property when you have everybody in your life who's likely not experienced with real estate investing or real estate in general telling you not to because of what they're reading and seeing and blah, blah, blah. Which kind of leads me to my next point. Like, if you follow me on Instagram, and you can find me there, Aramammo, Aramammo, or on the Spring Team Instagram account, you'll see that I had a reaction video to just a horrible piece of reporting from a Toronto Instagram account called SixBuzz, which just absolutely missed the mark on what the numbers were saying. They were saying for the first time last week, we had a massive 6-figure drop in Toronto real estate prices. But when in reality, they were comparing last February. And if you were in the market last February, you know that was the most intense market Toronto has ever seen, to this February. But like, where were they from until December? I mean, prices have been coming down consistently from like last July, August until around December, with a couple of blips in between. So, when I say the bottom of the market is like firmly behind us, I truly believe that. Like, you have to look at what's causing a lot of the pain in the marketplace and what's causing prices to come down. And like I've said a million times, prices don't just come down because they're too hot. Prices are going to come down because you're going to affect people's ability to purchase a property at a certain price because they're no longer approved for it, or they can't afford it, or whatever it is. So interest rates rising dramatically to combat inflation, which, let me remind you, was close to 5% like last year. So I don't know why the Bank of Canada waited so long to start increasing interest rates. I mean, I think they waited way too long to start increasing. And then we had, what happened with these sharp increases. But the idea that we're going to go through another wave of major increases like this, it just doesn't really make much sense, because we saw what happened initially. We saw that demand for real estate was actually quashed. Like, people were scared and paralyzed into the inability to make a decision. And they just said, hold off. I'm not going to make any purchases right now. But then once things started to flatten out, they started coming back to the market. Banks started understanding that, or not banks, people started understanding that, oh, okay, well, I'm not as scared about my job. Yes, there are some job losses, but I seem to be safe where I am. Even these job cuts, like Google cut a whole bunch of jobs globally, but now they're hiring in Toronto again. There are a number of tech companies hiring in Toronto again. So, like, I don't know where the confusion there is or what's going on, but it just seems like people are a lot more comfortable in their jobs with their finances than a lot of people think. And I think that right now we're seeing the result of people's confidence in Toronto and their own lifestyles and their own ability to carry these big mortgages at much higher interest rates. Like, we've got people that are making purchases today that are very similar to the prices and activity that we saw last February of 2022. Not all, but some. Like, there was one home that I talked about last week on Ivy, which is in the East End, Gerrard Street in like Greenwood area, that sold for a price that I thought was like $150,000 more than what I could justify with a comparable. That's very similar activity to what we saw in 2022, especially February and maybe some in March 2022. But the thing is, like, that's not an across the board situation. So it's very important that you're working with an agent that understands the market that you are in, because you might not have the same experience, because buyers, number one, buyers spent a lot of time getting educated over the past couple of years. They're using various tools, from Reddit to their highly qualified real estate representatives, to get them the knowledge they need to make really smart decisions. Buyers are no longer fooled by, cosmetic, shitty renovations. They're no longer rewarding developers for cutting corners. So they're seeing right through that stuff. But they're also seeing opportunities, and they're taking advantage of those opportunities. So they have to be in the hands of a good agent that could lead them to those opportunities and help them understand what really they have here. So there's a lot of interesting things happening out there, but I'm most disappointed in some real estate agents who are giving absolute trash advice to people, and or no advice at all. And this became evident when I was doing my research. I spent some time on Reddit this past week, just kind of listening to what people are saying about Toronto real estate. And the questions that are being asked in there by people that are represented by quote unquote professionals are kind of terrifying. Like, there are some people that are being told something, and then they have to go to this Reddit thread to confirm that what they're being told is actually correct. I mean, part of that is just people's distrust of salespeople in general. But we did this to ourselves, of number one, having an extremely low barrier to entry into this industry, which has now changed. Now it takes a lot longer to get your real estate license. So kudos to whoever made that whole situation happen. Now you have to go to Humber College. It's like a 1-year situation. When I got my license, it took me 3 months. I just sped through it. I got it, and I was immediately thrown out there. And so there are a ton of agents who are totally unqualified to be speaking about the market, advising clients with a very important financial decision, and confusing people into thinking that the market is sort of in a different place than it actually is. If you're only somebody who's been following monthly statistics and waiting for monthly figures to come out, you're missing 3.5 weeks of very important information that you should be able to relay to your clients. And so that's not happening out there at the level that the Spring team is bringing it to our clients, and some various teams that we interact with on a regular basis, they're bringing it to their clients. But there are a lot of underserved people in the city, and that became so evident when I was going through these Reddit threads. Like, very basic questions, and they're just a whole, but that also kind of happens, and buyers and consumers kind of do this to themselves as well. There are a number of threads in there that talk about, looking for the best discounted service, and you have a bunch of realtors that are offering their cash back scenarios and things like that. Like, I'm not going to be throwing my hat in a ring where my only value is the amount of commission that I charge or the amount of commission that I give back. In that scenario, like, a buyer is totally free to go and make offers on their own unrepresented. I just don't understand how an agent would insert themselves in that scenario where I'm giving like 20 grand back to this buyer after successfully navigating the purchase and everything involved before and after that purchase. So there's just a lot of race to the bottom kind of activity that sometimes it's realtors that start it on the listing side, but sometimes it's the actual consumer who's asking for this information. And if you ask for that kind of service, you're going to get that kind of, you're going to, if you're going to pay nothing for this representation, you're probably going to get close to nothing as well. So, it's not just like, oh, realtors are doing this and, we charge too much money and whatever. I agree. There are some realtors, teams, and whatever that charge way too much for their level of capability, but not the ones that I'm around, and certainly not us. And we will never enter into an agreement where our only value is perceived to be the amount of cash I'm giving back to you after you make a purchase, or how cheap my listing commission is. Like, when we list a property, I'm spending thousands of dollars on staging and marketing and everything, so that, if I sell a $2 million house, that $50,000 paycheck sounds big, but a huge chunk of that, 5 figures, is eaten up in staging and prep and marketing and all of that stuff, not to mention the hours spent using my 15 years of knowledge to get us from A to B. So I think that a lot of people in the market that we've come out of for like almost the past decade, where people assumed that homes just sold themselves, and kind of devalued the position of the agent in that scenario, where you could just put a sign up on the front lawn and it would sell. That might have been true, but how much would it have sold for? There are many instances where our specific input, effort, and energy has resulted in that sale gaining six figures more than a recent comparable because of the things we did to position that property in the market, which by all means, a home seller could totally do that on their own if they didn't have another job. Like, we are all in on this kind of stuff. So we would never really compete in those commission scenarios. And the commission scenario doesn't often come up with people that value us and know who we are. And the kind of market that we're in right now, it's very tricky. Like, if you're a buyer right now who's looking for like bottom of the barrel, just super discounted service to get some cash back on the buy, like, number one, it's definitely not client we're interested in working with on the spring team. But if you're represented by that kind of agent and you're coming up against me and my buyer in a offer competition scenario, there's a really good chance you're not going to be successful in that whole bidding situation. In fact, there's a very good chance you're not going to be successful in that scenario, because my knowledge, my skills, and my likely relationship with that listing agent is going to make my client's offer stand out beyond the one represented by a basic no service kind of realtor. So it does matter if you really want to get what you want at a great price with the least amount of pain. And that's the one thing that I think nobody really talks about out there, is like, nobody loves to move. Like, if you're anything like me, you prefer just to chill and kind of stay the course. You know what I mean? But like, nobody likes to move. But the way some people see it and the way I see it when we moved is like, we could stay where we are right now and continue to deal with all the pains and struggles of living in a small space with two dogs, a 6.5-year-old, my wife, and like all the entertaining we like to do. Or we could go through that short-term pain of making that purchase, burning a bunch of money on land transfer tax, the realtor commission I had to pay to the other agent who bought my place, and of course, moving and unpacking and all that stuff. But ultimately, all that was worth it, because now we have a place that we can call our family hub and we have a lot of great things to do. So like, nobody loves the idea of moving. It's a painful process. So why make it more painful by trying to like cut your agent off at the knees, or like put an arm behind his back and go into battle for you? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. And I totally appreciate the idea that some deals just happen a lot easier than others. And I'll tell you a story. I was working with a client like 3 years ago. It was a house in the Beaches on a street called Silver Birch, a really great street in the Beaches. And they had just called me like 2 days before. We went through a very specific consultation to discuss like what their needs were and all that stuff. And, a couple days later, this listing came up that was like a home run for them. Like, it was a home that was just absolutely perfect for them. It was like $1.5 million at the time. It was a really, really good option for them. So what we did was we went to go see it. They made an offer that night, and then they got the house. And my client said to me, like, that was a real easy one for you, hey? And of course I wasn't insulted by anything, because like, it looked like it actually was a very simple process. We saw the place, made an offer, we got the place really quickly. Like, it worked out really, really well. But what made that an easy process is my ability to, number one, I had a relationship with that listing agent. So I was able to communicate with them after hours via text and get like really candid responses back about the property, certain expectations, whatever. That agent knew that I was an agent that knows what the market's like. They know I come with well-equipped and prepared buyers. They know that a spring team agent is going to come to the table and not waste anybody's time. So there's all those like piles of evidence that have been stacked over my 15 years of doing this job at a really, really high level that got them to be comfortable not waiting until the offer date for this property and coming to us and saying, yep, let's work with you on this deal and make it happen. And of course, having that local market knowledge to know what price to come in at without trying to waste time and trying to say, well, let me try and save $5,000 here or $10,000 here or whatever. And my clients understood that. The listing agent understood that. The sellers were relayed this information and they understood that. So it looked like a really easy transaction, But at the end of the day, there was 15 years of experience and evidence building that helped that become an easy transaction without doing any commission discounting along the way, because I value my time and Spring Team agents value their time. So anyway, this video is getting a little longer than it normally should be. But the real thing is right now, inventory is still extremely low in most Toronto communities. I ran the months of inventory figures again this month using all of February's information, and every neighborhood ticked up on the MOI scale. But overall, with the number of sales increasing right now to almost pre 2022 levels, which we haven't seen in a long time, we should see that months of inventory stat slowly come down over the next few months, unless there's some sort of unlikely trigger to bring a bunch of people to market, which would affect prices again. So anyway, thanks for being here for this full 20 minutes. Follow us at the Spring Team on the Spring Team on Instagram, at Aramemo on Instagram. And of course, we are in the raccoon den here. So if anybody knows a neon sign guy, I need one right there. So send me their information. And I will see you next week for week 158. Real Estate Raccoons out. Have a great one.